Hey there, Matrix. Welcome to Educate. Let us look at the human eye in responding to the environment in humans. So basically, you need to remember one thing from my previous video, that the cerebrum, it is that part of the brain that interprets each and every sense. So whether you are seeing something, you are smelling something, you are tasting something, or you are imagining something, everything, it is controlled by the cerebrum. So basically, it means that messages, which we say that they are known as nerve impulses, they actually move from different sense organs and they go towards the brain. So the main thing that we need to know is that the nerve impulses are just the messages of something that is happening outside. For example, the smell that you are hearing, it is moved through certain neurons so that it can be able to reach the brain. So similarly, on the human eye, we need to apply the same concept in the context of seeing. So now, basically, this is how a human eye looks like from the front. So the human eye has got these couple of parts from the front. You also need to know how to look at how to identify them as well in a side view. So the eye has got eyelashes, the eye has got an eyelid, has got an iris, a pupil, and a sclera. So basically, I want to give you an idea here. The sclera, it is the white part of the eye. So basically, the sclera, it is what makes your eye to be white. So the white part of the eye, it is known as a sclera, and then the iris, it is the colored part of the eye. So when you've got a black eye, not the black eye after being beaten down, but when you've got a dark eye, a black eye, or a brown eye, or a blue eye, what is that blue? That part that is colored is known as an iris. Okay, so in this case, this female here has got blue eyes, of course. So the iris is that blue part, the colored part of the eye. And then the pupil, it is the opening into the eye. So the pupil, it is this round here that opens into the eye. Its main duty, it is to allow light to pass in so that it can be able to enter into the eye. Because for you to be able to see, you need light to enter or to pass through the pupil and get inside your eye so that you can be able to see. So the pupil is that opening into the eye. So furthermore, you need to know how the eye is protected. So the eye is protected using a couple of defenses from mechanical injury. So the eyeball, it lies inside the bony cavity. When you look at the skull of a human being, there is actually a hole, okay, where there is an eye inside. So the eyeball, it is actually hidden inside that hole. Okay, so it's more like this is all bones. So it is surrounded by what? By bones around it. So the eyeball, this eyeball, it lies inside a bony cavity to protect it from other mechanical injury and damage. And then the eyeball, it is also surrounded by fat tissue. So there are fats and oils that surround the eyeball as well, and it protects it from mechanical injury. We also have the most common ones, the eyelashes. The eyelashes are pretty common. You know that when you've got these things, amashi, these eyelashes, whenever there's dust particles, these actually prevent dust from entering into their eye. Okay, you know, dust particles, you know, all of those things, all of those foreign particles that might want to enter into your eye, the eyelashes are able to actually flush them out. So the eyelashes, they stop the particles such as dust from entering. The eye has got several other ones which I didn't mention. Even tears are part of the the protection of the eye. When something that is bad enters into your eye, of course, the eye has got tears. So the tears will try to actually take it out. So you will actually cry so that the object can leave your wonderful eye. So now we need to also look at the longitudinal view of the eye. We've already talked about the sclera being the white part of the eye. This is the sclera here according to this longitudinal view of the eye. We are talking about this entire layer. This entire layer is the sclera. So this entire layer that I'm highlighting here in yellow, this outside layer is the outermost layer. It is the one that we are able to see as the white part of your eye. So this is the sclera from the longitudinal view. Remember that time you saw it from the front view, but here it is from a longitudinal view. So the eye has got three main layers basically. It is the sclera, the one that is outermost. It is the choroid, the one that is in the middle, as well as the retina, the one that is the innermost, the one that is inside the most. So now let's first look at the sclera in detail, the white part of the eye. It is a tough layer. So this layer that I've highlighted in yellow, it is a tough layer. It is a layer that is inelastic. So this layer, this tough layer, is not able to stretch. When we say that the sclera is inelastic, it means that it doesn't have an ability to change its shape. It does not stretch. It remains tough. It remains durable. Okay, so the white part of the eye, it remains tough. It remains durable, and it's a white layer, and it protects the inner structures of the eye, because it is the one that is found outside the eye, the one that we can see as the white part of the eye. It is actually protecting the parts that are inside. It protects the inner part or the inner structures of the eye. And one of the other things that it does, it is to maintain the shape of the eye as well. So it maintains the round shape of the eye. So for the eye to be round like this, it is because the layer outside here, which is the sclera, it is the round shape as well. So it protects the inner structures, and it also maintains the shape of the eye. But please, you need to always mention these adaptations. It is tough, it is inelastic. Those two are the most important adaptations, because since it is tough, it is able to protect the inner structures. When they ask in 2 marks questions, you need to mention that it is tough and it is inelastic. We have got a choroid. The choroid is the second layer. The choroid, it is between, it is the layer in between. It is the one that follows the sclera. So this is the choroid, the one that is being highlighted in blue, the middle layer. Okay, just after the sclera, you can see that here there is a layer, and then this layer is known as a choroid. This layer is known as a choroid. So it ends here, somewhere here. So this is the choroid. So the choroid layer, it has got many blood vessels. So this is the layer that contains many blood vessels. The sclera is supposed to be actually a white part with no blood vessels, but the choroid has got many blood vessels. That's an adaptation. Okay, that's a feature that this eye has got. It has got many blood vessels, and those many blood vessels, what is their main function? Remember that blood carries oxygen and through hemoglobin, right? So basically the blood vessels that are many inside the choroid, it actually supplies nutrients and oxygen to the human eye. Is because the nutrients are actually carried by blood through the circulatory system. So when we say that the choroid, it is a layer, the middle layer there, it has got many blood vessels, it means that it is able to supply nutrients and oxygen to the eye, because the eye needs nutrients and oxygen as well, so that it can function to its fullest. So the choroid has got many blood vessels, and then it also prevents the reflection of light. They can say this is the internal reflection of light. So basically the choroid has got pigments. So the adaptations here, or the feature that that enables it to protect, okay, to prevent a reflection of light, it is pigments. So choroid has got these things known as pigments, and those pigments, they actually prevent the reflection of light. They actually absorb excess light rays. This will make sense when we study the structure and how it works. But basically, if there was no choroid, when light enters your eye, it will be just scattered and going in many different directions, and it will be reflected, and it will be just a mess, and you end up seeing what's inside your eye instead of seeing what's outside. All right, so it's kind of a freaky thing. So basically the choroid, it is the one that's having those pigments that absorb the extra light rays that we don't need in the eye. All right. And then now the retina, the functions will be discussed later, because you need to have an idea of how the eye functions, so that we can get to them. So there are many other functions. We're going to look at each and every part later on, and how it works as well. So now let's look at these parts here. First of all, let me give you 3 steps of understanding how the human eye works. We have got light stimulus. So the basic idea here says that we have got light stimulus. Remember, the stimulus, it is what's happening in the outside environment. So when we are talking about the eye, we look at what is the light. We must have light so that you can be able to see. So light stimulus must be able to enter the eye. That's the first thing that must happen for you to see. You cannot see in the dark simply because there is no light that is to enter your eye so that you can see. So the light is the stimulus that causes you to see. It is the one that stimulates you to be able to see images. Otherwise, when it's dark, you are not able to see for the mere fact that there are no light rays, or there is no light stimulus that enters your eye. That's why when you close your eye, you are closing the light from entering. You cannot see. Okay, so the basic idea, we need to have light that enters the eye. That's the first step. Let's focus on light entering the eye first so that we see how does light enter the eye and which parts are involved in the light entering the eye. So now this is the eye. This is the person looking at an image. Maybe here it is. This is the light. So all these red, they are representing light rays. So these are light rays that are trying to enter your eye because there is light outside. Maybe this is light from the sun, or this is light from your torch, or this is light from a beautiful bulb or something like that. But these are all light rays that must enter your eye so that you can see. So we start with this projection that is known as a cornea. So what is a cornea here? So basically the cornea, it is a transparent layer. So the sclera here is the white part, remember? So just above the sclera there is this part here that is a bumpy part. So this bumpy part of the eye, it is known as a cornea. So this is known as a cornea. So the bumpy part of the eye here, it is the cornea. So the cornea, just this section here, it is a transparent section. So the cornea is very transparent. It means that it can allow light to pass through. When you say that something is transparent, it just means that it is something whereby you can see what's on the other side of that thing. So in this case, the cornea is transparent. So it means that when light rays are coming, towards you, when light rays are trying to enter your eye, the cornea allows the light rays to enter. So the cornea, this is the cornea, this part that is transparent. So it allows light rays to pass through. So this is all light. This orange thing is representing the light that is trying to enter your eye. So the cornea, it is adaptable because it is transparent, so it allows light to pass through. Remember, we are focusing on point number 1. Light must enter into the eye. So the cornea allows that to happen. And then the cornea has got a convex shape. So the shape of the cornea, this shape that you can see, this roundish shape here, it is known as a convex shape. So this shape is very, 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 very significant in the cornea's function, because this shape actually causes the cornea to bend light rays. You can see that the light rays are many. There's a lot of light outside, in the outside environment. There's a lot of light that is trying to enter your eye, but the cornea here, the light won't be able to enter on this other side. It's because the sclera, remember, is tough. It's a white layer, but because the cornea is transparent, it allows the light to enter. So when the light is entering there, it is actually bending. The light enters and bends inside. So when you say that, when you see the word refract light rays, it just means that as the light rays are entering, for them to be able to enter your eye, because your eye is small, grade 12, your eye is small, that's why you cannot see what I'm talking about here. Your eye is small. So basically when the light rays are entering here, not all of them are gonna enter, only a portion of them are gonna enter. So the light rays are actually bent. They actually bend so that they can enter into your eye. The light rays actually bend so that they can enter into your eye. By the way, that was just a joke. I wasn't insulting anyone. So basically, we say that the other adaptation of the cornea it is a convex shape, so this allows a light rays to be refracted, okay, to be bent. So the light rays are being bent so that they can enter. It's more like a window. Remember that the window allows light to pass through, but not all of the light that is outside will enter. The light that fits only the window can enter. Similarly, that's what we mean when we say that the cornea's convex shape allows refraction of light rays. And then now the light rays, they will enter here this small section, which is the opening of the eye, the pupil. And then now we look at the aqueous humor. So now here at just after the cornea, this space here, just after the cornea here, this space here that I'm about to highlight in blue. So this space here, just after the cornea, it is filled with a lot of fluid. So it is filled with fluid. So it is filled with a fluid like water substance. Okay. So this fluid like water substance is known as an aqueous humor. So the aqueous humor here, the label, it is actually pointing this fluid here. So the aqueous humor is a fluid that maintains the shape of the cornea. So the main function of the aqueous humor, it is to maintain the shape of the cornea. Because you can see that for the cornea, if we think about it here, the cornea, for it to have this shape that it has, it's actually more like a balloon. Okay, the cornea is more like the balloon, and then the aqueous humor is the fluid that is filling that balloon, so that it's a round balloon. Remember, for you to see that the balloon is round is when you fill it with water or with a gas or with a fluid. So here basically the aqueous humor, it is that fluid that is filling this entire space such that the cornea will have this shape. So basically the shape of the cornea being bulgy like this, it is because of this aqueous humor that is filling the place. So the main function of the aqueous humor is to maintain the shape of the cornea. And it also slightly plays a role in refracting light rays. So it means that some of the light rays here, they are actually bent by this fluid. So some of the light rays, they are actually bent by this fluid. And then when they enter, the light rays will encounter here the lens. So the lens, it is this part here that looks like a disc. So the lens looks like a disc. So this is the lens, this round disc shape, a kind of thing. So this round disc that is known as a lens, it is an elastic. It's an elastic. That's an adaptation. Everything highlighted here is very important. The lens is elastic. When you say that the lens is elastic, it means that it is able to change its shape so that it can be able to focus on near or distant objects. But that's a concept that we're going to talk about later on. But when you say that it's elastic, it's able to change shape. When you say something is elastic, it's able to change its shape. And then it is also transparent. It is also transparent, so it allows light to pass through. Just like the cornea, light can enter through the lens because the lens is transparent. Okay, and it is also biconvex. So we have got three adaptations that you need to take note of here. It is biconvex. All these three words are important labels and descriptions for the lens. So it is elastic, it is transparent, it is a biconvex structure. So for this lens, since it's just a disc, what is actually balancing it inside the eye? Why is it not falling? It's because there are suspensory ligaments here. So there are things that looks like strings here. These things that look like strings, they look like strings, or they look like a izintambo. They're actually holding the lens in position. So when they ask what is the function of the suspensory ligaments, it is to hold the lens in position. So the suspensory ligament, they hold the lens in position. They're the ones that hold the lens so that the lens cannot fall. So the lens allows light to enter. When they ask the adaptations of the lens, you have to say that the lens is transparent. Therefore, it allows light to enter. That's the order of writing the adaptations of the lens. You are explaining that the lens is transparent. That is why light is able to enter through the lens. So since it is transparent, when light enters on one side, it will be able to move into the eye. Because for you to see, the light rays, this is all the light rays. The light rays, they must move or they must enter into the eye. So these are the light rays. Now they're inside the eye. It's because the lens allowed them to pass, because the lens is a transparent. It's a transparent part of the eye. So here is the light. You can see now that the light that was outside was a lot, but only less light will enter. It's because the light rays have been bent, they have been refracted, they have been actually made to be small enough so that they can be able to fit inside your eye. I hope that's being understood, matriculants. So now, the other thing, since we have said that the lens is elastic, it means that it can change shape. So it can change its shape so that it can focus on near and distant objects. That process is known as accommodation, which is something that we're going to study later. But you just need to know that when you are looking at objects that are far away and when you are looking at objects that are closer to you, the lens does not have the same shape at looking at both of them. Sometimes the lens is big, sometimes the lens is small. So it is elastic, it's able to change its shape. Sometimes the lens is something like this, sometimes it's something like this. Okay, so basically that's how it is. And then when the light enters here, you can see that it is in a space. So this whole space here inside the eyeball, it is filled with another fluid known as a vitreous humor. So vitreous humor and aqueous humor, those are the fluids that we find that are filling sections of the eye. Remember, the aqueous humor, it maintains the shape of the cornea. Similarly, the vitreous humor, it is a fluid or it's a jelly-like substance. So that's a jelly-like substance, and it maintains the shape of the eyeball. So this one doesn't maintain the shape of the cornea, but it maintains the shape of the eyeball. So for your eye to be round like this, it is because of the vitreous humor as well, because when it's, remember, it's more like a balloon. Imagine this round shape eyeball as a balloon and you fill it with water in it, it will be round. But if you remove the water, then it won't be round anymore. So if you are going to poke someone's eyes such that the vitreous humor will pour out, then ilihlo lizoshwabana or something like that. But basically what we're trying to say is that the vitreous humor, it is filling this entire space. So it is filled in this entire space such that it makes the space to be round. So it maintains the shape of the eyeball to be round. And it also slightly plays a role in bending the light rays as well, but that role is very small. So here is the light, it has entered the eye. So we are done with phase number 1. The light stimulus must enter the eye. So those are the parts that are involved in light entering your eye. Now that light has entered into your eye, there must be something that must happen to that light, because you are not seeing light, you are seeing objects. How do you end up seeing objects from just light? Now, you look at the other point number 2. Since we have said that the light stimulus has entered the eye, we are done with point number 1. The point number 2 says that this light stimulus must be converted into a nerve impulse. Alright, so the light stimulus must be converted into a nerve impulse. Remember, on my videos when I was presenting it to you about this thing of nerve impulses, I said that the stimulus is the outside condition or the environmental condition, and that environmental condition, for it to be able to get to your brain or for it to be able to get to the central nervous system, it needs to be a nerve impulse. Because you cannot see light that is moving through your skin and going to your brain. No, that is abnormal. So it moves in form of a nerve impulse. So this light stimulus, now that we have already talked about how light enters through the eye, because we have said that the light enters through the eye. So here is the light. It has entered. This is the light has entered through the eye. Now that light has to be converted into an impulse. That's when we look at the third layer, which is the innermost layer of the eye, which is the retina. Remember, I have constrained the functions of the retina earlier on, and I told you that this will be discussed later. The later is now. So the retina, it is the innermost layer of the eye. Remember, we've already said that the sclera is the outside, the choroid is the one in the middle, and then the retina is the innermost layer of the eye. So the innermost layer of the eye, we are talking about this small one here. So this is the retina. This is the retina. This is the innermost. When you say innermost, it is the one that is found inside the most. Okay, that's how the English works. So this is the innermost part of the eye, the innermost layer of the eye. So this layer known as the retina, it is the one that contains rods and cones. So there are these things that are known as rods and cones. So collectively, we say that they are known as photoreceptors altogether. So it's rods and it's cones. And we say that they're known as photoreceptors. What do receptors do? I remember that on my videos introducing neurons, I told you that the receptors, they've got a function of converting stimulus into an impulse. So the rods and cones are known as photoreceptors. They are found on this layer. They are found on the retina. The rods and cones, which are the photoreceptors, are found on the retina, and you need to know what is their function. Their function, it is to do what is to be done in number 2. The light, remember, must be converted into a nerve impulse. So here, the photoreceptors, the rods and cones, they convert light stimulus. Remember, the light that is entering here, this light is a stimulus. Okay, it is a stimulus. So this light stimulus is entering the eye, and then this retina has got rods and cones on it. So those rods and cones, or those photoreceptors, they convert that light stimulus into an impulse. Okay, so the light stimulus will now be converted into an impulse. But now you ask yourself, why do they have to be two? Because I'm mentioning rods, I'm mentioning cones, but they're doing the same functioning, the function of converting that light into an impulse. The rods and cones are different when it comes to the amount of light. So rods are responsible for night vision. So they work in a low light area. So when it is dark, that is when the rods are in action. And when there is bright light, maybe during the day, then we have got cones. The cones are the ones that are playing a role. But they are doing the same thing. They are converting light stimulus into an impulse. But when it is dark, it is the rods that are the ones that are converting light into an impulse. Right? The rods are the ones that are active at night or in low light vision, when there's low light, when it is a bit darker. All right. Whereas during the day or during bright light, when there's bright light, the cones are the ones that are responding, the ones that are working, and then they provide colored vision. So basically, during the day, you are able to see color, but at night, I mean in the dark, you're not able to see the color of some objects. Okay, so basically, the roads are responding at night, meaning that they actually convert light stimulus into an impulse at night, whereas the cones, they convert light stimulus into an impulse during the day or during bright light conditions. But these, both of them, are photoreceptors. They are found on the third layer, the innermost layer, the retina. So now we have done number 2. The light stimulus must be converted into a nerve impulse. How do you explain that? The retina has got rods and cones. Those are photoreceptors, and their function is to convert light stimulus into an impulse. Hey, great ones. Please make sure that you rewind this video. If you want to pass, rewind this video and make sure that you understand each and everything. Listen to me with the inch of your concentration. All right. But now on the retina, there are two parts. We've got a yellow spot and a blind spot. So the yellow spot is here. This is the yellow spot. This is on top of the retina. Okay, this is on top of this green layer, the innermost layer, the retina. So this dent-like structure here is known as a yellow spot. So the yellow spot is here, and then here is the blind spot. So here is the blind spot. Since the yellow spot is there, here is the blind spot. Yeah. So now what is the difference between the yellow spot and the blind spot? So the yellow spot has got a big amount of photoreceptors. So here at the yellow spot, there is a high concentration. So there is a high concentration of photoreceptors, or you can say of rods and cones. So there is a high concentration of photoreceptors or of rods and cones. So it means that at the yellow spot, there is a lot of rods and cones. So when you go to the yellow spot of the retina, here at this position here, the yellow spot of the retina, this yellow spot here, this is the spot that has got a high concentration of photoreceptors. It means that you will find many rods and cones at the yellow spot. Remember, the rods and cones, what is their function? To convert a light stimulus into an impulse. And then now at the blind spot, it is the opposite. This is the blind spot here, somewhere here. So the blind spot basically has no, so it does not have, so it contains no photoreceptors. It does not have photoreceptors. That's why it is known as a blind spot. So it does not have photoreceptors. So the yellow spot has got what? Has got photoreceptors, a lot of them, rods and cones, so that they can convert light stimulus into an impulse that can do their function. All right. But the blind spot, it does not have any photoreceptors. So it contains no photoreceptors. So basically, when light goes to the blind spot, you won't be able to see that image. Okay. But when light goes to the yellow spot, you'll be able to see that picture or that image. It's because the blind spot, it doesn't have any photoreceptors. So it cannot actually convert the light into an image that you can see. So basically, the yellow spot, high concentration of photoreceptors. Blind spot, it doesn't have photoreceptors. Let's make sure that we understand that as well. And then now we are done with the second phase. The second phase, the light stimulus must be converted into an impulse. Now we know how it's converted into an impulse using rods and cones, which are photoreceptors. Now the third thing, the nerve impulse. Now that is now exists. Now we have a nerve impulse now, a message that can be sent to the cerebrum. So the nerve impulse, it must be sent to the cerebrum for interpretation. So for you to be able to see the impulse or the message that the brain understands. Remember, an impulse I introduced to you as a message that the brain can understand. So now that it's no longer light, it is now a nerve impulse. It must go to the brain. It must go to the cerebrum of the brain so that it can be interpreted, so that it can be interpreted as an image, okay, as something that you can see, as someone that you know, or as a table, or as anything that you can see. So now, what parts are involved in doing that? We have got this part, which is the optic nerve. So the optic nerve, it is the part that is involved with function 3, which is to transmit the nerve impulse. So it transmits nerve impulses from the retina to the cerebrum for interpretation. So the optic nerve, basically, remember I've said that the impulses are generated here at the yellow spot, right? Because the rods and cones there, they are converting the stimulus into nerve impulses. So those nerve impulses, they will be transmitted by the optic nerve. So this optic nerve will transport the nerve impulses all the way to the cerebrum. Remember, at the cerebrum, that's where all the senses are interpreted. So now that's where you will be able to see. So when you're actually seeing an image, you are not using your eyes to see. The brain is the one interpreting the image in front of your eyes. So basically, the brain is the one that's interpreting. So here, the impulses that have been generated or that have been converted here at the yellow spot from light stimulus, they will go to the cerebrum. They will go to the what? To the cerebrum, so that the cerebrum can interpret them. So the function of the optic nerve, it is to transmit nerve impulses from the retina to the cerebrum for interpretation. And then the other thing is that this optic nerve, they can say it has got a high concentration of sensory neurons. Remember, we've said that sensory neurons are used to transmit nerve impulses from the receptor to the central nervous system. I've made a video on that. You must have checked it out. Alright, sensory neuron, they transmit nerve impulses from the receptor. The receptors are here at the yellow spot, at the retina. So the photoreceptors, the rods and cones, they are continuously changing this light stimulus into an impulse, and that impulse will be taken away by the sensory neurons in the optic nerve. So the optic nerve has got sensory neurons because they are the ones that are taking the impulses towards the cerebrum. So when they say that, when they just say name the part that has got a high concentration of sensory neurons, you talk about the optic nerve. So once you are done with this, you now know how the eye functions and how you are able to see an image. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to also stay tuned.